Hi there. Welcome to this online lecture where I'm going to talk a little bit about time series analysis. I hope you're very well. My name's Gareth. I'm a Managing Director with First Intuition, one of the UK's premier accountancy training colleges. Got my email address there, garethjohn@fi.co.uk. You're more than welcome to get in touch if you've got any questions about your studies. I also use Twitter a lot to communicate with students and answer questions and post various useful resources like online lectures. You're welcome to follow me at AAT Top Tutor. Now, First Intuition, in the last few years, we've won UK Accountancy College of the Year in 2010, 2012 and now again in 2014, which we're really delighted with. I was very proud to be awarded UK Accountancy Lecturer of the Year in 2011, and we were also nominated for Study Resource of the Year in 2013. So hopefully you're in safe hands. Well, we're going to have a look at some time series analysis here, thinking about how we can use time series analysis to make forecasts of the future. That's the sort of point of time series analysis, is it tries to understand patterns that have gone on in the past to help us to identify forecasts for the future. So, we've got some sales for the last 6 months. We've got sales over the last 6 months of 105, 140, 190, 135, 170 and 220 respectively. Now we're going to assume a 3-period seasonal variation on the figures here. Basically means that the seasonal variation we're expecting to repeat every 3 months. And we're going to try and identify the trend in the data, the seasonal variations, and then use that knowledge to help predict sales for the next couple of months, in months 7 and 8. Well, if I start by simply listing these sales figures for the first 6 months in a table here. Now those sales figures, they are the time series. The time series is just a series of numbers over time. Got a series of sales figures over the last 6 months. And what we can start by doing is identifying the trend in this information. The trend is a long-term increase in a consistent direction. Now the way we'd achieve that is by working out 3-period moving averages. We were told that the seasonal variation repeated every 3 months. So if I actually take 3 months at a time and average them. So the first 3-period moving average will be the 105, 140 and the 190. If you add those up, divide by 3 to average it, I get a figure of 145 as my first 3-period moving average figure. Now because that's the average of months 1, 2 and 3, you can see I put it right in the middle alongside month 2. Now this is called a moving average because we then move down to the next 3 periods, which would be 2, 3 and 4. And if we average those 3 figures, 140, 190 and 135, divide by 3, gives me 155 as my second trend figure, and so on. So we then move down to the next 3 months, which would be 3, 4 and 5. Average those 3 figures, we get a trend figure of 165. And then in fact the last trend figure I can actually work out is for months 4, 5 and 6. So if I add up 135, 170 and 220, divide by 3, gives me a moving average figure of 175, or a trend figure of 175. Now, you'll notice with these trend figures you can't actually work out initially trend figures for months 1 and 6, just because of the way you're averaging 3 months at a time. But if you notice the trend figures, you can see a much clearer, consistent movement. The trend figures are actually increasing. In fact, they're increasing by 10 each month in a nice, consistent, smooth increase. But once we've identified the trend, we can start thinking about the seasonal variation. The seasonal variation is just comparing the time series figures we achieved back to that trend. If you look at month 2, the time series of 140 was a little bit below the trend. That's telling me that month 2 isn't a great month. In fact, it was 5 below the trend, so it gives me a seasonal variation of -5. If I then look at month 3, well actually the time series in month 3 is a lot better than trend. So if that month 3 is quite a good month, it's up by 35. That's a positive seasonal variation. Month 4, well, month 4, 135 time series is actually quite significantly below the trend. I reckon the seasonal variation there is minus 30. And then the final month I can actually work out a seasonal variation for is month 5. And in fact, month 5, 170, is a little bit below, again, down by 5. And in fact, because we're working with a 3-period seasonal variation, we would expect the seasonal variation to reoccur every 3 months. So in fact, the seasonal variation we got in month 2, you would expect to have something similar in month 5. And in fact, we've seen that they're both 5 below the trend figure. Well, I've actually identified now my trends and my seasonal variations, so how can I go about predicting the future? So we wanted to come up with predictions for months 7 and 8. Well, when we were analysing the last 6 months, we looked at the trend first and then the seasonal variation. And when you're doing your forecast, very similar idea. First job is to actually extend the trend and try and work out what we think the trend's going to do over the next few months. Now, we identified that the trend was a nice consistent increase of 10 each month. And because trends are consistent movements in the same direction, we would expect that to continue. So I'd expect the trend to continue increasing. So in fact, month 6, I'd expect a trend figure of 185. Month 7, I'd expect a trend figure of 195. And then month 8, I'd expect it to continue to increase by 10 to give me 205. So the first job is to extend the trend so you can identify where you think the trend is going to take you. Now remember, they are not the figures we'd actually expect to sell because there'll be seasonal variations. So if we're looking at month 7, now month 7, if we think about our 3-period pattern, month 7 should be the same as month 4. And month 4, if you remember, was quite a bad seasonal variation of minus 30. So if I take the trend of 195, deduct 30 for this poor seasonal variation, I'm thinking that in month 7, I'll be looking at a predicted sales figure of 165. Month 8, well, month 8, if we've got a 3-period seasonal variation, would be the same as month 5, which in fact is the same as month 2, if you remember, which is a seasonal variation of minus 5. And so again, if we take our trend of 205, just deduct 5 this time, month 8 is not expected to be quite as bad as month 7, which gives me a predicted sales figure of 200. So I think in terms of my forecast sales for the next couple of months, in month 7 I'm expecting 165. So I'm expecting it to be significantly below trend, in fact by 30. And then month 8, I'm expecting it to be 200, so probably a little bit below the trend. Well, I hope you found that useful, just in terms of getting to grips with how you'd identify your trends, your seasonal variations, and then use that information to predict the future. Like I said, feel free to get in touch if you've got any questions, so you can drop me an email, or maybe I'll see you on Twitter at some point. But thanks for your attention. See you next time.